theme for the month is leap and the net will appear. Leap and the net will appear. And the question that I have for this morning, which is today's message, is what are you faithing today? What are you faithing today? I'd like for you to go with me on an imaginary journey, if you will, for just a moment. If you will just close your eyes. We've actually done this in our celebration service before, but if you will close your eyes, and if you will imagine in your hands a piece of clay. It can be whatever color you desire, but feel the density of the clay. Feel it in your hands. Feel the texture. Now, as you take this clay in your hands, if you will just think of something that you'd like to create, something you'd like to create, and begin fashioning it with this piece of clay. It might be an animal, it might be a tool, it might be a person, but something that you want to, and you take your fingers and your hands, you might roll the clay in the palms of your hands, you might begin stretching and pinching it out, rolling parts of it. Many of us can remember as children where we used to take Play-Doh and do this very thing, but just taking that clay and fashioning it into whatever it is that you choose in this moment to create. As you shape it, roll it, mold it, and then see before you the finished product. And you may open your eyes. And I thank you for participating in that process. In the Christian Bible, or what some people refer to as the New Testament, there's in Hebrews 11th chapter, it begins, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In New Thought Metaphysics, we talk about substance all the time. Substance as being something that we use in the creative capacity that we have as we create things. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. What you just did in your mind's eye with a piece of clay, you took that clay, if you will, that substance of clay, and you did what with it? You molded it and you shaped it. And it came to be whatever you desired for it to be. And as we talk about in this teaching, in the same way that as we shape that piece of clay, we also shape our lives. We shape occurrences in our lives. We do so taking that substance, and the thing that propels and the catalyst for that is faith. Faith allows us to take the stance that as I wish to have things develop and unfold in my life, I do so from the perspective and the standpoint of faith. Now let me say this, because sometimes I think maybe I'm not completely clear when I say things. When we talk about how we create our reality, we create our lives and fashion and shape that, that's not to discount the fact that we live in an interactive, interconnected world. And there are things that happen that are outside of us. There are other people that are involved in our lives. There are other circumstances that happen in our lives as well that very often shape and mold and influence things in our own lives. But the good news about all of that is that you and I have the ability in the midst of whatever might be happening for us to do something different. We can take what happens in our lives, situations that come up, and we can find tools, and we can find creativity and other things to be able to bring some balance and very oftentimes bring us through those situations and circumstances. Because very often in our teaching, in New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, New Thought, Metaphysics, however we want to call it, people sometimes will victim blame. Something happens to someone, and then people will go through this whole process. Well, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? You know, your thoughts create your reality. You must have been thinking something. I went through that. As just about everyone in this room knows, the situation where I was in the hospital, very, at one point, clinging to life and all of that. And I went through a dark period where I was sitting there in the hospital and then later at home. What was I thinking? What did I do to cause this? What did I do to bring this on myself? And while I did that, all I did in that whole process was continue to tell the story. Continue to tell the story. Well, you know what happened to me? You know what went on? And you know, they said I almost died and they didn't expect me to make, and just continue to do that. And it wasn't until I claimed that story, but I started to tell a new story, a story of healing, a story of hope, a story of recognizing and realizing there was more to my life than the situation that had occurred. And that is a part of the creative process, faithing. Faithing. You notice I said, I didn't say what do you have faith in today, because the one thing about the limitations of language, particularly when we are translating languages from one language to another language, in English, faith we basically think of in terms of being a noun. But in the Aramaic that the Master Teacher Jesus spoke, and in the Greek that the New Testament is rendered in, faith is really a verb. It really means to faith, and so I like to coin the phrase faithing. The faithing is a process that we go through, a process that we do in order to bring ourselves into a situation and a circumstance that we do in fact shape and mold things. We do so from the perspective of faith. And I'd like to offer, if you will, some suggestions on how we can faith. Y'all like that? Faith. How we can faith. The first way that I think that we can do is to recognize that each and every one of you already has a track record of faith. You already, whether you believe it or not, have a track record of faith. That was one of the things that that 11th chapter of Hebrews did. If you go back and read it, one of the things that you will see is called a roll call of the faithful. And it begins talking about all of the people in Israel's history that were people of faith. It talks about Abraham and Moses and many of the other people that we know from the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. But they're heroes of faith, if you will. It begins to bring and address a track record for these people of faith. You have a track record of faith already in your life, whether you realize it or not. Each and every day you demonstrate and practice faith. A very good example is that most of you drove here this morning to drive the Memphis traffic. Is an act of faith. But more importantly than that, things that we very often take for granted. When we trust other people, when we go to a physician, we go to a dentist TC, we go to many other places where we do many other things, we may not always think about it consciously, but in our minds, there's a certain level of trust, a certain level of security that we put in those matters. We are faithing now, believing that this building that we are in, we're on the second floor, and we're believing that this floor will hold us, maintain us. We hear the rain outside, but we're also faithing and trusting that the roof that's on this building is sound enough so that the rain that's falling outside doesn't fall on us in the inside. Amen. But we already have a track record of faithing. But not only those simple things, but if you think about situations and circumstances in your life, situations and circumstances in your daily living, things that I may not know about, that others may not know about, but situations and circumstances where very often you have, in fact, faced seemingly impossible odds or circumstances against you, only to find that you have prevailed because you did trust, you did believe, you did faith. That's not to say that you won't have doubt. That's not to say that you won't agonize sometimes. That's not to say that sometimes you won't find yourself wondering, how did I get myself in this situation? Why is this happening to me? But ultimately, there were some things that happened that allowed you to overcome, to make it through. I was reading the other day, they were talking about one of the things that when we start looking at religious institutions today, the levels of attendance based on different generations and different age groups and all of that, and people were talking about younger people. A lot of times, one of the reasons why they're not necessarily attracted to some of your traditional religious institutions is that they always hear the gospel of struggle, if you will. And while I can understand people not wanting to always hear about struggle and things like that, I also do think that we need to acknowledge the fact that in the midst of struggle, we may not be struggling now, but to celebrate the fact that we came through those struggles. That is why we are here. That is what helped us to make it where we are today. So we have a history of faith. The next thing that we do on this journey of faith, and as we were covering the basics a few weeks ago in our June series of messages, we talked about something that we call in this teaching the mental equivalent. The mental equivalent. That is, whatever it is that we wish to have expressed in our lives, before it happens, we already see it as done in our mind. But more importantly, we already know it as done in the mind of God. The process that I had you to do with the clay just a few minutes ago is that before you ever fashion whatever it was in your mind, and I started to do it like we did it a few years back, everybody had their own can of Play-Doh, and you were able to take it out and actually physically fashion something. But before whatever it was that you shaped and molded in your mind, before you did that, you had a thought about, this is what I want to create. This is what I want to fashion. This is what I want to take place. We say all the time that anything that we see is created twice. It's created in the mind, and then it takes shape in physical form and manifests in some way. The mental equivalent is that first process of creation, that first step where we see it in our minds. Think about the things that you wish to experience. Think about the things that you wish to have present and available in your life. We think about them before they ever really happen in our lives. We do that. That's the process. We create the mental equivalent. You hear us use slogans like, you have to believe it before you can achieve it. You hear people say those things all the time. That's really what we're talking about. Seeing it in our mind's eye, knowing that it is there, trusting again that substance. You hear me when I pray that when I am finishing up the prayer, I talk about putting things into the creative medium. The creative medium. The creative medium is that place within the universe in which things, in fact, are created. It's the word literally. Created, the term creative medium. It's that place in which things happen. You hear people will tell you, if you really, the whole scenario of asking it is given. People say, you ask what it is that you wish to have expressed in your life, and then it shows up. But in the middle stage is the how. People will say, don't worry about the how. The how is not your concern. The how is God, universe, source, spirit, however it is we wish to determine. That's where the how takes place. That's the creative medium. Think about those moments I talked about where you have things that seem almost impossible in your life, and yet they came through. Yet they happen. Yet they manifest. Yet they materialize. Yet they came forth. Yet all of a sudden you looked up and there they were. The creative medium works on those things. The universe is constantly conspiring on your behalf. Let me say that again. Because if I was in a traditional setting, I might get an amen from that one. The universe is continually conspiring on your behalf.
Amen.
We live in a universe. I like how Morton Kelsey, who was an Episcopal priest, and he was also a psychiatrist, and he said that faith was believing that the universe was positively inclined toward us. Faith, the universe, constantly inclined toward us. So we believe that. We know that the creative medium is going to act upon that which we give it, that which we place into it, that which we turn over. Think about that song that sometimes we would sing, take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there. But that which we trust that the creative medium will act upon. We have that ability that's within each and every one of us. We can take it today, we can use it, we can affirm what it is we'd like to have happen in our lives. We can begin visualizing it, and saying it, and staying with it. We don't just do it one time, but we stay with it until it comes to fruition. There's a story years ago that I read. It was a book, as a matter of fact, about a group in Malaysia called the Sing Oi. And the Sing Oi were this amazing group of people that the author of the book, who studied them, I'll put my anthropologist hat on for a moment, who studied them, talked about, he had heard about the Sing Oi, and he wanted to contact them and to meet them and to study them because they seemed to be people who were connected with things that were happening, with things that were going on. And so he was in Malaysia, he was asking around about it, and somebody said, well, there's a gas station that's over in this part of the area that's close to where they live, that were off in the forest, and said that if you go there, there'll probably be someone that can lead you to them or maybe tell you how you may be able to contact them. So he makes his way there, and as he gets to the gas station and he makes his way around toward the back, he saw a gentleman who stands and he looks at him. He doesn't say a word, but he turns around and he starts walking away. And the author says that there was something about the man's manner that said to him, I'm supposed to follow him. So he follows him. And pretty soon, as they make their way through the forest and all of that, they come across these groups of people, it was the same order. He began spending time with them, and he would go back to the city and he'd write his experiences and all of that. And every time, and this was, I'll tell you in a moment, the time of the era in which this happened, but he would go back to the city, write on his typewriter his experiences, and then he would show up at that gas station. And every time he did, there would be someone waiting on him. He never told them when he was coming or anything, but there was always someone that was waiting on him. And they would lead him, he'd make his way back to the people. And he asked them one day, well, how is it that every time I show up, you are already there, you show up? And they said, we just know, just know. And one thing that bothered him about the Singoi, though, was that they had been characterized by academics that studied them as not having very much imagination and therefore not having very much intelligence. They said, this can't be. These are people that just simply have this knowing. He said, not only do they show up, but they had another practice that they would do every day. They had several different groups where they were, and they would all play, the children would play together, they would spend time together and all of that. When it came time to go to sleep, everybody went to sleep wherever they were. But when they woke up in the morning before they did anything, they would share their dreams. And the really amazing thing about their dreams is that dreams complemented one another. Very often they would dream the very same dreams, and one of them might forget a part, and the other would fill in the part. Well, this is what I saw in my dream, and this is what I saw in my dream. And that became their order of the day. Whatever they dreamed about, whatever they saw, they carried out that activity for the day. There were sometimes they got a dream to just maybe stay where they were. One time they woke up and they had this dream that was a kind of disturbing dream. And that disturbing dream was because they saw these eagles that were dropping these balls of fire, and many people lost their lives in it. And the author, when he looked back on the time that they described that was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. They saw that in their dreams. He said that another time that when there was a dream that happened, it was a jaguar crying off in the distance in the forest, and they all turned to him and said, that dream was for you. And he kind of worried, and he got back to town, got in touch with his family, only to find out that his youngest son was very sick, had just taken sick right around the same time that they had expressed that dream to him. And he was able to get to see them and take care of them. But they had been labeled as not being very intelligent and not knowing a whole lot, because when other scientists that were studying them and other groups of people who were trying to figure them out would take a Singoi child or adult and they put a piece of paper in front of them and they tell them, now draw. And they would sit there and they would stare at the blank piece of paper, not knowing what to draw, what to do. And it was only when, if they would say something, they described something, draw an animal, draw a bird, draw something, that they would then draw something very vivid. And I thought about that, how this amazing group of people, that even in the midst of all the things they were to do, there's so many other things I could share about their story, but I won't. But that it was only when there was some direction to that which they were seeking to create that they were able to create. And that's the last stage in this whole process of faithing and creating that which we wish to see. Giving it direction, not in the sense of telling spirit, source, universe what to do, but seeing ourselves in a mode, putting ourselves in place for it to happen. After all, we don't want to be like the man who kept asking, and this is sort of asking God to win the lottery. He kept asking, and every time there was a drawing, he didn't win anything. And finally, you know, the way the story goes, God said, well, you got to buy a lottery ticket first. Put yourself in that position, directing and guiding. When I was first doing something that I don't do as often now, that would be to put very positive things online, because I think there's so much negativity, so I would find quotes and other things to put on social media. And one of the things that I read one time, and I've written about it in blog posts, I've used it in messages and everything, but I want to end with that. It was a picture of a bird in the dark. It is said that faith is like the bird that begins singing even while it's still dark. And even though it might be dark, the bird senses that there is more to come, senses the sun is going to shine again, and starts to sing. What are you faithing today? And so it is.
And so it is.
Good morning, Open Heart.
Good morning.
We want to invite you to take a breath, releasing this breath, knowing that there is only one power and one presence in the universe, and that is God. And as each of us takes in all that we have learned today, we take it in, we make it our own, and we simply live those very truths. We give thanks for all who have participated today. We give thanks for the messages, the simmering moment, the affirmative reading, and just all of the beautiful energy that each and every one of us has brought into this space and into this place today. Moving forward, asking myself the question, what am I faithing today? Knowing that I already have a track record. Knowing that all I have to do is make that little equivalent. Put myself in a position to see it, to believe it, and to receive it. What am I faithing today? Whatever it is, I release, I let go, and I let God, and so it is.
So it is.